hear me? Quit sniveling, act like a man." The voice knifed through my kitchen window before I'd even killed the truck engine. Chains on the porch swing rattled once, and somewhere inside my house, my 9-year-old grandson whispered, "Sorry." I sat there for half a breath, the sound floating in that narrow space between autumn wind and silence. That's the kind of sound that changes a man. If stories like this matter to you, please subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Let's dive in. Let me start with the sound of our porch swing. It's older than I and wide wooden slats, hand-sanded years ago, hung on chains that sing a little when the wind pushes through. In summer, the swing clicks faint as a cricket, and the chains hum like they've learned to talk. When my grandson Eli was little, I'd sit out there with him and pour sweet tea into a plastic cup with a cracked handle and tell him how the light moves across the cornfields. He'd swing his legs and aim his questions at the sky. Why do storms walk on tall legs? Do birds pick the same clouds every day? We had a ritual then. He'd hand me a pencil he called the captain, and I'd draw every sort of thing right there on the porch. Tractors, planets, a dog so round it looked like a biscuit. The neighbor's dog, Duke, learned to whine at our gate around 4 each afternoon, knowing Eli would come out and share a cookie or a crust. We had that rhythm the way a town has church bells. So late last autumn, when the sun fell early and the mums were dying into that rusty color, I came home from the hardware with a box of carriage bolts, turned into the drive and heard a voice I didn't recognize. It wasn't my daughter, Ruth. It wasn't Eli. It was him. "You hear me? Quit sniveling. You want to be a man in this house, you act like one." It stopped me cold. The way he said man bitter, like the word itself had failed him. He was new to us, technically not even a husband yet. Nathan Cole, but he told folks to call him Nate. He worked 2 towns over, remodeling bathrooms. He wore a lot of cologne and called himself old-fashioned, when what he meant was he liked control. The first time I met him, he shook my hand like he was trying to knead bad dough. The second time he said, "Sir, you got this place sitting on money. Acreage in this market?" I said, "It's not sitting, it's rooted," and watched his smile fall 1/8 of an inch. I sat there in the quiet cab of the truck with my hands on the wheel, and that voice working its way through my chest like a splinter. I thought about the porch swing and the pencil and the light over the fields. And then I heard something else, something small, soft, an apology trying to be brave. "Sorry," that was Eli's voice. 9 years old then, perfectly built for a pocket knife and a fishing pole, but still soft in the way boys can be when they feel safe. Except that sorry was not soft at all. It was thin. It was something being stretched. "How many times I got to tell you about leaving your crap under the table? That old man shouldn't have to trip over your mess every time he comes in," Nate said. My left knee did an old man trick where it locks and then shakes, and I didn't feel the bolt box heavy on my lap anymore. I didn't feel 32 degrees, or the smell of gasoline, or the shape of the steering wheel under my thumbs. I only saw my grandson's face in July, back when we'd grilled burgers under a sky so blue you couldn't look at it without feeling hopeful. He'd leaned against me, sleepy, and the porch swing had rocked us into the kind of silence that tells you everything you need to know. Nothing in that silence had warned me that autumn would bring a man into our house who could twist a boy's apology into a chord. I didn't storm inside. I didn't learn to do that in 68 years of living. I sat there and counted to 10 the way my father used to make me when I got hot at a ball game. Then I counted to 10 again. When the shaking in my knee quit, I climbed out of the truck and set the bolts on the porch rail and went in. No one was in the kitchen. The smell of fried bologna hung in the air like a memory. I heard Eli in the hall bathroom, the faucet running, the kind of quiet that tells you a kid is wiping his eyes with paper towels because he doesn't want to use his sleeve. The porch swing clicked once in the wind. The eyelids of the house felt heavy. "Eli," I said. "You okay, bud? Water off?" A breath, his small voice again. "Yeah, Granddad." Before I could say more, Nate came from the living room with that smile on his face, the one that's all enamel and no warmth. "Oh, hey, Mr. Walker," he said. "I was just telling the boy we keep a tidy ship here." "I keep a tidy ship," I said. "We," he said politely. He spread his hands. "I respect your home, sir. I was just telling Eli we don't leave toys out underfoot." He nearly had his trucks all over the floor, and I just think young men thrive on standards. He had on a flannel too clean for November and a belt with an oval buckle that said "coal contracting," as if his pants needed reminding. He smelled like pine cleaner and chewing gum and something else, the kind of sharp cologne you buy off a kiosk. "I know what young men thrive on," I said. "They thrive on being treated like boys until they've earned the other thing." Ruth came in with a laundry basket on her hip, a tight look, the kind you wear when you've put your hair back too hard and your scalp hurts. "Daddy," she said softly, like a reprimand meant for later. "Let me put this down." I caught my daughter's eye for a fraction of a second. We used to communicate by a look, a whole grocery list shared between us, a whole sorrow, a whole joke. Now her eyes slid away like water off wax paper. "Dinner soon," she said. "Eli, hands. Nate, would you check the oven?" "My hands are clean," Eli said, and then added in a hurry, like a boy thinking of tides. "Sir, if you've ever taught a boy to fish, you know a line under tension when you feel it. You feel it through your fingers, through your wrists, up into your shoulder. You also know when a fish on the line isn't fighting the way it should, when maybe something's wrong you can't see." That night the line hummed, but nothing tugged. The house itself held its breath. We ate fried bologna and onions, white bread, mustard. The kind of supper you eat standing up with the television low, except we sat and chewed the way you do in a hospital waiting room. Nate told a work story about tearing out old tile and discovering mold the size of a Labrador, which made Ruth laugh too brightly, and Eli stare at his plate like the mustard could answer for him. When dinner was done, I rinsed plates and listened to my grandson carry the clatter of his trucks up the stairs like they were too heavy for toy plastic. That night, after the dishes and the news and the creak of the house settling into the cold, I sat on the porch swing and let my weight test it. The chains hummed. The moon came up through the birch in pieces. I thought about what men call themselves and what they really are, about my daughter when she was small, about her mother, God rest her soul, and the different kinds of quiet a house can hold. Then I did something I don't do lightly. I made a promise. I said it out loud because promises do better when they can hear themselves. "Eli," I said into the night, into the hum of that old swing, "you will know you are safe." The next shock came the following Tuesday in the grocery store parking lot. I'd picked up flour and bacon and a bag of oranges that smelled like the church Christmas pageant. I was carrying the bag out when I heard that voice again. Nate's drifting over the line of pickup trucks like someone had set a radio down on the curb. I edged between two bumpers and stopped, pretended to admire a dent. "I'm not kidding, he's soft," Nate said into his phone. He was leaning against his white van, the one with the big black vinyl letters, "Coal contracting." "Ruth won't push him. The old man won't let me do my job. What am I supposed to do? He cries at school, for God's sake. Counselors are just going to make him worse. Military school would fix him quick if we could afford it. Or a farm. Something." A pause. A laugh. "Nah, I keep telling Ruth we've got to set rules." I caught him texting his little friends way too late again. 9 o'clock. Can you believe that? He needs a taste of real life. I was busting tile at 9. Tell you the truth, sometimes I think the only way I'm going to get through to that kid is to make him uncomfortable. My hands went so still, the oranges bit into my palm. He shifted, scuffed a boot, went on, voice lower. "Hey, speaking of getting things in order, what do you think a place like Walker's acreage would bring? He's got more land than he needs. The porch alone's the size of an apartment. I told Ruth I'd help handle it all, streamline, sell what's just sitting, put the cash to work. It's time to build a real future. She knows I'm a doer. I didn't hear the rest. I couldn't. A bird flew up from the pothole maple by the cart corral, and the sound of its wings and that cold air paper tearing was enough to bring me back into my body. I walked to my truck and set the oranges down and stood there for a long time breathing steam. You can teach a boy to fish, to whittle, to name birds. You can set up a swing and push him until his sneakers point at Jupiter. You can raise your daughter to read men's eyes as well as their words. But there are days when life shows you a snake and asks what you're going to do besides stop. The answer for me was as old as my father's toolbox. Gather, measure, set a plan. I didn't call my daughter and demand anything. I didn't confront Nate at his van in a space loud with the sound of cartwheels. I went home and made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad, the yellow kind that makes the pencil sound louder when you write. I dated the page. I wrote what I'd heard, word for word as best as I could remember. I put the time down, the weather, who else was in the parking lot if I could picture them. I wrote not as a man raging, but as a carpenter laying out a square. Then I started a second page and drew a line right down the middle. On the left, prong 1, protect Eli. On the right, prong 2, protect the house. It sounds cold to lay a story out like that. Revenge is warm if you do it wrong hot, even, and then it burns the wrong people. Justice, if you're stubborn enough, is cooler. It keeps a steady temperature. It doesn't need to shout. I made an appointment with a lawyer in town named Alma Whitaker. People call her Al, which seems to please her. She's my age, give or take. With white hair, she wears short and square reading glasses that magnify her steady eyes. She's helped half our town with wills, and the other half with boundary disputes over trees that grew crooked, and fights that have nothing to do with trees. Alma has a way of talking that makes you want to sit up straighter, like the words themselves insist on posture. We sat in her office, which is really a converted dining room with shelves where plates used to be. A worn rug kept the cold from the floor, and her coffee maker made that little nighttime ship's engine sound that coffee makers make. "What can I do for you, Mr. Walker?" she said. "You can call me Thomas," I said, and then told her most of it. Not the part about my fear that I kept to myself, but the rest. The voice in my kitchen, the phone call in the parking lot, the way Eli said, "Sorry." I told her I didn't want to blow up my daughter's life. I wanted to protect the boy and the place he calls safe. I wanted it clean. She listened like a farmer watches the horizon. No interruptions. When I mentioned the house, she said, "Do you have papers on the property?" "Yes, ma'am. Paid off. Deed in my name. Title clear." "And your daughter and Mr. Cole live with you?" "They do. Temporarily, I thought, while Ruth got back on her feet after the furlough. Then Mr. Cole insisted it made more sense. You know Streamline." She smiled at that, a kind of slow blink. "Do you have a will?" "I do. It leaves the property to a trust for Eli." "Good," she said, and the word fell into the room like a brick into a footing. "Then that gives us a foundation." "For what?" "For boundaries. Legal ones. You have the right to set house rules, including who may speak to your grandson in your home and under what conditions. This is not a boarding house, Thomas. It's your home. As for the boy, if you believe he's being harmed, emotionally, physically, or otherwise, we can pursue a protective order and involve the appropriate folks. Child Protective Services will have to talk with him. Are you willing to document?" "I've been documenting." "Excellent. We'll need dates, times, witnesses if possible. Try to gather corroboration where you can. And Thomas, keep your cool." "It will matter." "I plan to," I said. "Good," she said again. "I'd also like to suggest we talk to your banker. If there's any hint that Mr. Cole intends to leverage your property or coerce you into selling, let's place a key in an appropriate lock." Now, I'm an old man but not naive. I asked, "You mean set up something so he can't talk me into some nonsense?" "I mean exactly that with grown-up terms. We can file an affidavit of intent regarding disposition of property that flags unusual transfers on the county record. It's not a padlock, but it's a door chime. And we can make it clear in writing that any changes to your property require counsel. gentle guardrails. I sat for a second and let the little engine of her coffee maker do its sound. Gentle guardrails. Yes, we drew up a plan. I signed some papers with that scratchy pen lawyers like because it makes men like me feel what signatures cost. I left with a folder under my arm and the sense that the porch swing in my chest had creaked forward an inch. Next came the banker. I've had an account at the county bank so long the tellers have held my daughter as a baby and my grandson as a newborn and my hand as a widower. Bankers are not sentimental creatures by training, but they are still people, and ours is small enough that births and funerals filter into the vaults like flour dust in a kitchen. The vice president there is a fella named Carl Duggan, mid-50s, 2 sons in college, a tie that always looks like it came from a Christmas present. I have never once seen that man buy a pen. He hands them out and takes them back like communion. We sat in his office with the little yellow inter-office envelopes piled by his elbow like ships in harbor. "Thomas," he said, "what's on your mind?" "Protecting the house, protecting Eli," I said. In that order, because the first helps the second. I told him what I could, careful with names. He listened. He wrote something on a note card and slid it under a coaster, which is a banker trick that makes men like me feel like something permanent just happened. I'd like to put a hold on any home equity lines, cash out refinances, title changes, or any move that would reduce my position in the property, I said, sounding more formal than I knew I could. I'd like a note placed on my account and on the property file that no one is to discuss the property with any third party without my presence or counsel present. That we can do, he said. We can put advisories on. Can't stop everything if you go marching in determined, but we can slow bad ideas down and alert you. Think of it as sand in the gears for anyone who isn't you. Sand in the gears, I said, and smiled for the first time that day. He leaned in. And Thomas set up a separate savings with me, small balance if you like. Then connect a text alert to your phone and to my desk. If anyone attempts to run your social for a credit pull, you and I will both know inside the hour. I nodded, surprised at the heat in my eyes. Thank you, I said. I'd like that very much. On my way out, I stopped at the counter and asked Sandra, who has worked that bank since Reagan, for a stack of deposit slips. I like the way the paper smells. I like being ready. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my folder and my slips, and wrote down the day's moves. I taped a small envelope under the table. Do not comment on this, just accept old men have their ways. And in it I placed a list of numbers. Alma's, Carl's, the sheriff's office. Then I put another list, same numbers, plus Eli's teacher on a card in my wallet, where my fishing license used to live. I took out the old license and set it on the table a moment. Looked at the boy in the picture. The one who thought one day he'd be this old and still know where to aim. It didn't take long before the first piece of evidence found us. On Saturday, Eli and I were in the yard cleaning out the gutter with a little scoopy trowel he loves. He pretends it's a miner's shovel. He narrates his discoveries. Here we have the famous maple seed, shaped like a helicopter, known for its bravery in flight. The sun did that thing it does in October where it feels close to the ground. We were both content. The way work with purpose creates a kind of halo. "Break's over," Nate called from the driveway. "Didn't know we were on your clock," I said. He laughed like I told a joke that made him sad. "Man, the way you cuddled this one," he said to Ruth, who stood on the porch with her arms folded tight. "He's 9 going on 4. You can't baby a boy into being a man, Thomas." "You can't badger him into it either," I said. He came closer. His boots were too new for the job. "What's that?" he said, nodding at Eli's trowel. "Treasure tool," Eli said. Nate snorted. "You hear that? Treasure tool. You know what my old man called a treasure tool? A hammer. Because you go make treasure with it." He wasn't talking to me or to Eli, not exactly. He was talking to the air, to the porch, to the ghost of what he thought a father should sound like. "Come on, kid," he said. "Let's see you carry something heavier than your feelings." "Nathan," Ruth said softly, a warning or a plea, I couldn't tell. He bent to pick up the bucket of gutter muck-wet leaves, little paper helicopters, thrust it toward Eli. Go on, 2 hands. You drop it, you scoop it again, until you learn. Before I could say a thing, Eli reached for the bucket with both hands, set his jaw the way I've seen him do when a math problem looks like the roof of a barn, and lifted. It was too heavy. He moved 2 steps, knees shaking, and a slush of wet leaves slopped over his coat sleeve and onto his sneaker. Oh, now look, Nate said. Now we got a mess. Now we got enough, I said, and my voice surprised us all. It wasn't loud, but it had that porch swing chain in it, no give. Put the bucket down, I said to Eli. We'll move it together. We don't baby him, Nate said. We teach him, I said. I didn't look away from Eli, who watched me with eyes like a deer in the road, waiting for the right cue. We're a team, bud, I said to him. On 3, 1, 2. I grabbed the other handle. 3. We moved the mess. Ruth looked at the sky like it might offer a sign, then went inside. Nate went to his van and, with a kind of slow, performative grief, started banging around in the back, like men do when they want the world to measure their noise and call it work. That night, my promise trembled like a moth near a porch light. I slept badly and woke to a sound that wasn't the swing or the birch or the ice maker. It was the soft, urgent ping of a text. I reached for the phone with the clumsy care of thick fingers in the dark. It was a message from Eli. He rarely texts me, even though I bought him the little flip phone after school started. We have rules. He follows them like he's learned to love fences, because they mean someone built them thinking of him. Granddad, you awake? Yes, buddy. What's up? Can I come sit on porch? Of course. I went to the door and opened it, and the night came in with its cold smell, dead leaves, and a hint of river. Eli came tiptoeing, sock-footed, jacket over pajamas, flip phone held like a talisman. He sat on the swing, light as a robin, and the chain hummed. What's got you up? I asked. He held my gaze for a second and then looked at his knees, the way boys do when they want to be brave and honest at the same time. He started, and the word stuck. You can tell me, I said. You know it. You can tell me anything. He yells, he said like he was confessing. When Mom's not here, sometimes he squeezes my shoulder. It hurts. He says it's to remind me. To act right. I saw red without seeing red. You can hold a boil, let it simmer if you've done this life long enough. Okay, I said. Okay. He says the porch is for babies, Eli said. He says only lazy people sit. He says you use up your good sitting when you're old. We will not be taking our porch advice from that man, I said, and Eli smiled, the first time all day. We will be sitting as needed. He took my pencil, Eli whispered, and now the tears came, stubborn little soldiers. He said I had too many second chances. He threw it in the trash. Which pencil? I knew which pencil. The captain. I felt for my wallet like I could pull out courage and hand it to him. Instead, I reached into my pocket and found a stub, the carpenter's pencil I had sharpened against the concrete earlier. I handed it to him like an oath. Here's a new captain, I said, and I will find the old one. He looked at the pencil the way a believer looks at a relic. The chain hummed again, and a fox barked down by the ditch, and everything in me settled into a clarity that was more than anger. It was purpose. It was the kind of quiet you get when a storm has to pick a direction. Eli, I said, I want you to keep your phone charged. If he ever tries to scare you, you call me. If he ever touches you, you tell me exactly where, exactly when. And if he ever throws away something of yours again, you tell me. I don't care if it's a gum wrapper, you tell me. He nodded. He wiped his nose on his sleeve because boys forget they're wearing a jacket when it's dark and they're tired. I reached for my handkerchief and gave it to him. The porch swing creaked. An old faithful boat at mooring. Granddad? He said, yes, am I a baby? You, I said, and the word came out like a bell, are 9. You get to be 9 until you're 10. That's the rule I'm enforcing. He let out a breath that felt like a prayer answered and put his head on my arm and fell asleep there, the way he did when he was 3. I stayed until the cold made my knuckles feel like pebbles. and the moon went warm in the birch. Then I carried him inside, light as a memory, and tucked him into bed with my handkerchief under his pillow like a folded flag. The next day I installed a small camera on the porch, pointing at the front door. Not inside I have my lines, but where comings and goings are public, where mail gets delivered and boys sit with old men. I put another camera out by the driveway, looking at the van. I'm not a spy. I'm a documenter. This town is one-party consent, which is a legal phrase that sounds like a sad country song, but it meant I could protect without inventing sins. A week into this plan, I discovered the first bank of proof. It was a text thread on Ruth's phone. No, I didn't snoop. She left it face up on the porch rail while she fussed with a potted fern. The phone lit up, as shame loves to do, and there was Nate's name and his words like a line through a field. We need to tighten him up. You back me up or we'll never get anywhere. Thomas undermines me at every turn. He's soft and old school. He doesn't get that boys need to be pushed. Pushed, I said out loud to no one, and Alma's face appeared in my head. Steady, steady, so I took a picture of the screen with my own phone, careful not to invade private ground farther than necessary. It felt like picking up a nail in the road and setting it aside before it ruins a good tire. I collected emails too. Ruth had asked me to print something for her, a school flyer, and her email opened to a thread with Eli's teacher, Miss Kingston. The most recent message was kind, careful, brave. I've noticed Eli seems anxious when he's picked up by Mr. Cole. We're working with the school counselor to give him tools for communication. You're both welcome to meet with us any time. If you've never loved a school counselor, you haven't lived in a town where they hold more children together than duct tape. I printed the flyer. I did not say a word about the email. I sent Miss Kingston a note of my own that afternoon. I wrote, "Thank you for seeing my boy. He has a porch at home that is safe." She wrote back 20 minutes later, "That matters. Evidence is not only screenshots and paper. Sometimes it's the kindness of a teacher that you save like a quilt square. It builds something better later." The first confrontation came small, at a kitchen table, like most wars do. It wasn't about a bucket or a pencil. It was about dinner. "Boy needs to learn to eat what's set in front of him," Nate said to no one again. "He pushes his peas around and pretends to be full. It's disrespect." "He ate 3 helpings of corn," I said. "He can be forgiven the peas. Corn's sugar," he said. "He needs discipline." "Discipline is not a food group," I said. He set down his fork hard enough to make the ketchup bottle jump. "You think I'm the enemy," he said, "when I'm the only one trying to make this kid a man." Ruth looked at me, a long, pleading look. "Choose something, Daddy," the look said. "Choose peace or truth." I chose the thing that keeps the other possible. "Say you're wrong," I said to him, calm as winter. "For just a minute, say you're wrong about what makes a kid into a man. Would you want to be the one who taught Eli that men are loud and harsh and impatient? Or the one who showed him that men are steady and kind and strong because of it?" "What I want," he said, "is for someone in this house to back me up." "Then earn it," I said. "Earn it with him. Not by making him uncomfortable, by making him safe." He looked at Ruth like she was supposed to catch the ball I'd thrown. She didn't. She couldn't. She bent and cleared plates as if chores were a spell that would make a better life appear. That night, in my room, I wrote down what had been said. I tucked it into the envelope under the table because an old man's secrets will rot if you keep them in the dark too long. Sleep came like an opinionated friend. 2 days later, Eli came home with a yellow paper from school. He handed it to me before he showed his mom. "Miss Kingston says give it to you," he whispered. It was a note. "Thomas, we had a productive talk in guidance today. Eli said he feels safest with you. We discussed speaking up when he feels overwhelmed. Please call me if you'd like to meet." I called her from the porch. The camera watched me like a well-behaved dog. "Thank you," I said when she answered. "I had a sense that a steady adult was needed," she said. "And, Mr. Walker?" "Yes. If you're comfortable, I'd like to open a file with notes. It's standard. If anything escalates, it helps to have dates. Please do, I said. And please write down that at home Eli has a porch that is safe. I will, she said, and I could hear her smile through the wire. We met the next day, me and Miss Kingston, and a woman from the county office who had tired eyes and the kind of patience that comes from seeing more than her share of messes. Her name was Shonda. She said, "I'm not here to blow up families. I'm here to keep kids whole." "Then we're on the same team," I said. They asked questions the way a nurse asks about pain, location, duration, intensity. I answered with what I knew and what I suspected and what I refused to be wrong about. They showed me a document, a safety plan. It wasn't a restraining order, it wasn't a lawsuit. It was a statement of expectation that in this house we would do no harm, and if harm happened, there would be immediate calls, immediate action. "I can sign this," I said. "Good," Shonda said. "And you can also call me any time, night or day." I wrote her number on the card in my wallet, right under Alma's. When I got home, Nate was in the yard measuring the dogwood by the mailbox, like he could make it taller by frowning at it. "What's this?" he said, seeing the county folder in my hand. "Paper," I said. "You like paper?" "What sort of paper?" "The sort that keeps boys safe," I said. "And houses steady." He laughed again with that sad humor. "You going to call in the cavalry every time I tell a kid to pick up his socks?" "I'm going to call if you put your hands on him again," I said. "And I'm going to call if you try to move numbers around on a deed. Consider this sand in your gears." He stopped smiling. "You think you're clever," he said, and there it was, the edge. "You think you'll win. You're an old man with a porch and a dead wife in a quiet town that thinks you're nice because you say hello in the grocery store. But your daughter chose me. I'm the future. You can't stand it. You want me to get angry so you can feel like the man you think men are," I said. "But I'm not going to give you that. I'm going to give you boundaries and a bench if you learn to sit. Is that a threat?" He said. "It's a chair," I said. "You can sit in it or you can stand out in the yard and explain yourself to the neighbors. Either way, I'm not moving." 3 days later, we had our storm. It was nothing dramatic, no slammed doors, no police lights. It started with a text. "Eli." "Granddad," he squeezed again. "Where, bud?" "Shoulder." Said I was slow. "Mom was at store. Are you okay right now?" "Yes, he's upstairs. I'm coming." I grabbed my coat and the folder and the list and walked out under a sky the color of tin. When I got to the house, I went straight to the porch, pressed the doorbell once, then walked in like men used to when neighbors were family. Nate met me in the hall with that smile that tried and failed. "You can't just Eli," I called. "Porch." He came fast, eyes big, shoulders up. I put my hand gently on the place he'd said and felt the heat of fresh anger there. I had exactly none left for anything else. "Nathan," I said, "step outside." "Why?" he said. "So you can make our business the neighborhood's entertainment? So the porch can remember which man it holds." We stepped onto the boards that had been under my feet for 40 years. The porch swing creaked once, as if clearing its throat to sing. "You're not going to put your hands on the boy again," I said, my voice steady enough to set a glass by. "You're not going to raise your voice to humiliate him. You're not going to speak about my property as if it's your plan. If you do any of those things again, I will call the sheriff and I will hand him this folder, and we will let the county do what the county does." "You're bluffing," he said. I opened the folder and showed him a paper with my signature and Shonda's and Miss Kingston's neat print. The words "safety plan" are simple. They carry more weight than men like Nathan think until they feel them land. "I have documentation," I said. "Dates, times, witnesses, notes. I have a text thread where you describe making Eli uncomfortable. I have a banker who will call me if you so much as sneeze at my title. I have a liar who wears the patience of saints and the teeth of a plow. And I picked up the chain of the swing and let it hum. This place. You're going to ruin your daughter's life," he said, but there was a quiver in the voice now, just a bit, the way a beam sounds before it decides to hold or give. My daughter will choose what kind of life she wants, I said. I am going to build one in which my grandson knows that men are safe with him, not safe from him. He took a step, a half one, like the human animal does when choosing between fight and retreat. He looked at the yard, at the birch, at the camera. Oh yes, he saw it then, back at me. The porch swung gently between us like a sentence. You're a stubborn old man, he said. Correct, I said. He went inside. He came out 10 minutes later with a progress look on his face, the kind men wear when they've landed on a short-term solution that lets them pretend to be magnanimous. I'll sleep at my brother's tonight, he said. Give everyone some space. I nodded. Good. He got in the van. He drove away. The camera watched the taillights leave like a dog watches the road after the wrong car. That night, Eli slept well for the first time in a week. I know because I did too for 3 hours, and then woke with the certain knowledge that a man like Nathan will not be grateful for boundaries. He will test them with his shoulder, with his charm, with a story, with his grin. He will try to sell a narrative before he sells a house, so I made another plan. It was smaller, quieter. It required patience and a pot roast. You have to understand how our town works. We are large enough to have 3 stoplights and a high school with a football team that comes close some years. We are small enough that the whole town smells like smoked meat on Thursdays when Vera runs her special at the diner. If you want the truth to travel, you do 2 things. You speak clearly and you feed people. The rest will happen whether you want it or not, but it's better when it happens with gravy. I invited my daughter and Nate for Sunday supper. Bring your appetite, I said. We're doing it right. Ruth came early to mash potatoes, her shoulders easing as she moved in a kitchen that remembered her before she was tired. Nate came exactly on time in a shirt 1 button too tight, which is how men like him tell you they've been trying hard for at least 10 minutes. We set the table. We put on a record of fiddle music that has been through every summer since '79. Eli folded napkins into something he called sails. We sat, we passed bread, we ate. Conversation was ordinary. That was by design. Halfway through the second helping, I said, I appreciate you both coming. I wanted to talk with our mouths full. Nate grinned, suspicious. That a joke? It's a truth, I said. Things go smoother when no one has both hands free. Ruth sighed and set down her fork. Daddy, she said. She was ready for the scolding. She was ready for the breach. I didn't give her either. I want to start with what I love, I said, and looked at my grandson who watched us all like a boy watching weather, trying to decide whether it would rain at his ball game. I love this family. I love this house. I love Sunday supper and the sound of the porch swing and the way your mama used to talk with flour on her hands. I love the fact that we are here together and not in 4 separate rooms with 4 separate screens. That is what I love. Nate nodded like a man in church feeling proud of having been invited. Ruth's eyes went wet the way they do when she is both relieved and scared it will end. And I said I have some documents. Nate's fork stopped. I put the folder on the table, opened it, and slid out the safety plan. This is an agreement, I said. It says that in this house, Eli will be spoken to with respect and firmness without humiliation and without physical coercion. It acknowledges that if any of us feel unsafe, we will call the appropriate folks and handle it like adults with help. Nate laughed a small laugh that sounded like a soda can opening. You see what I mean, Ruth? He said. He's got the state in our dinner. This is crazy. This is care, I said. It's a safety rail. It's a sign. It's us saying who we are in writing so we have something to point to when memory starts to wander. I slid another paper over. This is from Counselor Whitaker, I said. It says I own this house and the land beneath it, and that any talk of its sale will go through her. You think I want your house? He said, but his eyes went to Ruth's first, which is how you tell what a man is truly asking. Ruth, you tell him you told me in the parking lot you could streamline it, I said. That's not what And this, I said, and slid out the photograph of Ruth's text thread. is something you wrote about making Eli uncomfortable. You may not have meant harm, but harm is harm, and this is a record of an intent you can pretend is a theory but reads like a plan. Silence. Only the clock and the soft hum of the record and the faint squeak of the porch swing in the breeze. Eli's eyes were huge. Ruth's lips parted as if she'd say something, and then closed as if she'd changed her mind. "You set me up," Nate said, his voice the soft, dangerous one. "You brought me here to feed me and then... what? Humiliate me in front of your own daughter?" "This," I said, "is not humiliation. This is accountability. Humiliation is a weapon. Accountability is a mirror." He pushed back his chair. It made a sound like a small animal in a trap, and my whole body remembered the sound of chain and leaned toward the porch. "I'm not doing this," he said. "I'm not signing your little papers. I'm not living under your spy cameras like a criminal." "You're not signing anything?" I said. "You are hearing it. You are seeing it. And you're leaving this table with the knowledge that if you choose a path that harms my grandson again, the path leads through Alma and Shonda and the sheriff and this town, which is good at remembering what it needs to and forgets the rest." He stood. His hands shook a little. He looked at Ruth again. A different look now, less demand, more appeal. "Are you going to let him do this?" he said. She looked down at the papers. She looked at her boy. She looked at me. You can't know what a woman is thinking when she's balancing love and fear. But you can pray that love is not the only thing she's carrying. You can pray that courage is under it. "I'm going to do what keeps my son safe," she said, and her voice was very small, but very true. He breathed through his nose and nodded like a man accepts a tip under protest. "Fine," he said. "I need air." He walked to the porch. The swing creaked. He stood there with his back to us, looking out at the birch like it had betrayed him. Then he left, boots on steps, steps to gravel, van door, engine, the sound of something moving away, and thinking it's going somewhere. He didn't come back that night. He did come back to get his things 2 days later at lunchtime while I was home, and Ruth was at work. He had a friend with him, a man with a beard like a shovel and a hat that said Mateo, but I don't know if that was his name or his business. They went in and out with boxes. I watched from the porch. I let them. The camera watched too. The swing hummed. The friend nodded at me the way you nod at a gravestone. Ailey came home that afternoon and saw the boxes gone and looked at me like sorrow had just knocked him in the jaw. He walked to the swing and sat and set both hands on the slats like he was checking it for a pulse. "It's okay to feel everything you feel," I said. "It's okay to be sad and mad and glad and scared. You know where those go? Right here, where we are." He nodded, manfully. "He is 9 and he is a river. He will find his way through rock, Granddad." He said a moment later, "What if he comes back?" "Then we handle it again," I said. "With our plan, with our people." He stopped. Am I still allowed to miss him sometimes?" "Missing is a sign that you loved," I said. "It's allowed. It just doesn't get to drive." He leaned into me. The porch took the weight. "You might think that's the end, and in a just world it would be. But justice is not a door that opens once. It's a hinge that needs oil." We kept our plan close and our friends closer. We kept records like we were planting apple trees. Nate tried one more thing. Of course he did. He tried to get Ruth to meet him at the diner to talk logistics. He told her he needed to clear the air and to bring certain papers she had tucked in a drawer, school records, a copy of Eli's birth certificate, a line on a bank statement for a savings account we keep for the boys' college. I saw the text. She showed me. It's not snooping when a drowning person hands you their diary and asks you to read the page that might have the magic words. "Should I go?" she asked. "Only with me and Alma," I said. So we went to the diner as a trio, which is not the shape of meeting he wanted. He looked annoyed and then smiled big, that floating smile he wears like a fishing lure. He ordered coffee. He said how nice it was to see us. He complimented the biscuits like a man tries to boomerang a conversation back to comfort. "We won't be discussing funds," Alma said. polite as a laminated placemat. He shrugged, leaning back. "I just want what's best for Eli," he said. "Then you can sit quietly while his mother and grandfather build that," Alma said. He looked at Ruth, because he needed a weak plank and not a pier. "You know, we could move closer to my work," he said. "Get a smaller place and build equity. It's not fair to live off your dad forever." "We're not living off him," she said, finding herself like a coin in a pocket. "We're living with him while I rebuild. And we're building something you cannot see." He rolled his eyes, but he truly saw, that a woman with a good lawyer and a father with a ledger is a different opponent than a woman alone. He paid for his coffee like a man who wants a receipt to look generous. He left a tip that hoped to be remembered. He walked out whistling a song that was more habit than happiness. The world wandered toward Christmas. Eli learned a carol on the school recorder that made the dog hide. We put lights on the birch, sloppy and personal. We bought a small present for Ruth from Eli and a smaller one for me from the both of them. And we wrapped them at the kitchen table with tape that stuck to everything but paper. The porch swing got a ribbon tied to one chain, like an ornament on an ear. Then the day came when Justice put on her boots and walked down our very street. We were at the school gym for a winter fundraiser. The whole town showed up because that's how you keep a school afloat when state budgets don't know your zip code. There were crock pots along the edge like soldiers' chilies, soups, casseroles. There was a bake sale table that deserved to be painted and put in a museum. There were raffle baskets wrapped in plastic that made everything inside look better than it really was, which is a good trick to remember for hard days. The sheriff himself was there, big hat, big mustache, heart to match. He donated a fishing trip, which I quietly made sure Ruth bought a ticket for, because I know what souls need. Nate showed up, of course. Sponsors get their pictures taken. He stood by his company sign and shook hands and did that male thing where you point at another man and laugh like you just told a joke only he gets. He wore a sweater that made him look like a catalog, said Sincerity. Miss Kingston caught my eye and came over. So did Shonda. So did Alma. Funny how a circle forms when it needs to. We were all just there, loving kids, eating chili, holding this town up with our ordinary hands. Then Jake Reynolds, who runs the raffle with a bullhorn voice and a heart like a pot of stew, banged his gavel. Literally, he brings one from home for results like this, and said, "All right, folks, it's time to announce our Citizen Helper Awards for the year." People cheered because you have to cheer when the gym is full of steam and hope. Jake held up a certificate. "Our first award goes to a man who's contributed generously to the School Improvements Fund and to several families in need of home repairs this year. Mr. Nathan Cole of Cole Contract." Alma's hand was on my sleeve before my brain decided. Shonda's eyes had moved to the sheriff's. Ms. Kingston had not stopped smiling, but the corners were ready. I did not plan what happened next. I don't mean to say I moved without thinking. I mean the thinking was already done. It lived in all those papers and all those nights on the porch and in a 9-year-old boy's shoulder. "Hold on, Jake," I said, my voice carrying the way it does when the gym once knew it as a coach's. "Before we hand that out, there's something we should hear." People turned because people always turn toward a voice that is full and calm and old. I climbed 2 steps onto the stage. Alma did not stop me. Shonda watched like a nurse with the phone ready. The sheriff's hand went to his belt, not for his weapon but for his radio, because he knows that truth is an incident too. "I'm Thomas Walker," I said into the mic Jake shoved at me like a bread loaf. "I've lived here my whole life. This school taught my daughter, and it's teaching my grandson, and it taught me how to stand up when it matters. I want to tell you something." I didn't look at Nate. I looked at the crowd. I saw faces that have loaned me sugar and borrowed my ladder and watched me be a fool and watched me bury my love and watched me hand out extra sweet tea at summer ball games. You can't lie to faces like that. They'll forgive you eventually, but they'll know. Better to press the bruise and find out if it hurts, because it should. "Sometimes a man looks like he's helping," I said, "and sometimes he is, and sometimes he is good at looking like it. And sometimes the people around him are trying their best to make that true, because that would be so much easier than seeing what's really happening. That has happened in my house this fall. The gym made the sound of inhalation as a shape. No one here is on trial, I said, but a boy in this town has been hurt, not broken. We did something before it went that far, but hurt, and it will not happen again. I held up the folder. This is what we did. We documented, we alerted, we set boundaries. We called the right people. We didn't rage. We didn't seek blood. We sought safety. We remembered that a house is not lumber and nails and paint. It is a promise. I turned then and looked at Nate, because a man deserves to be looked at if he is to be held to an account. He stood, hands in his pockets, that smile gone somewhere it couldn't help him. He raised his chin the way men do who can't find something else to raise. Nathan, I said calmly, you are not being honored here tonight. You will not be honored here until you honor a boy's safety. If you'd like to learn how to do that, you can sit with me on my porch any day the weather allows. We'll show you. If not, you'll leave the boy and this house alone. I handed the mic back to Jake. For a second, the gym existed in a new weather pattern where air felt heavier and kindness had a weight. Then the sheriff stepped up without siren or swagger and said, "We take the safety of our kids seriously. If anyone needs help setting boundaries in their homes, my office is open." Shonda nodded. Miss Kingston smiled, and it was fierce. People clapped, not because they love to clap at pain, but because they love to clap when the truth has the courage to come in costume as peace. Nate left. He didn't slam the door because there was no door to slam. He walked out under the naked winter sky, and his boots found gravel the same as mine. In the parking lot, I saw him pause by his van and grip the roof rail, his head bowed like a man who finally felt his own weight. From there, life didn't turn rosy. It turned real. Ruth wept for a week, and then got quiet, and then got angry, and then got still in a way I recognized, as the moment before a seed decides up from down. She filed things that needed filing. She set her own boundaries with letters and reminders and a therapist who gave her 2 sentences that changed our mornings. Feeling is not failing, and you can love and leave. Eli learned how to say no without thinking he owed anyone a but. He learned to throw a baseball again without flinching at the sound of a man's feet coming up behind him. He learned that porch swings will hold and chains will hum, and some men will never be made to feel big unless they make someone small, and that those men are not allowed the keys to his mind. Nate found himself facing the consequences that grown men who have never sat still fear. The loss of access, the loss of the audience, the loss of words that used to work. He didn't go to jail because that wasn't the point. He went to counseling for anger because the court suggested it strongly, and he went to a landlord because he needed a place to be that wasn't mine. He sent Ruth 3 texts about money and one about a present for Eli, and all 4 were answered with pictures of receipts and screenshots of the safety plan and healthy co-parenting boundaries that looked like fences, not walls. The house breathed again. It's a strange sound when a building exhales, but you hear it if you love a place long enough. The porch swing took Eli's weight and mine and sometimes Ruth's, and we added a cushion stitched by hand by my neighbor Fran, who used to sew church banners and knows the exact color of good news. And then there was the captain. I found it behind the trash bin in the garage, tucked like a knife in a sheath. I knew it by the nick on the wooden side where Eli had once tried to sharpen it with a butter knife. I held the pencil like you hold an old shell in a drawer. Then I walked back to the porch where Eli was drawing a spaceship that looked like a jelly donut because he's 9. "Look what turned up," I said, and held out the pencil. He gasped the way children do when magic is proven right there on a Thursday. He turned the pencil over tenderly. He held it to his heart and then, without fanfare, put it behind his ear like a carpenter in a movie and got back to his spaceship. The porch swing hummed. Winter soft. Mud season came, rude and necessary. We bought seeds and paper cups and put them on the windowsill like hope lined up for school pictures. Eli's shoulder healed so thoroughly that one day he forgot which side it had hurt. I wrote that down because it mattered. The bruises you can't see take longer. I wrote that down too. We did one more thing the version of me from last October would have loved. We sat with Alma at her office, me, Ruth, and Eli, and set up a trust that had more logic than money, because sometimes logic is the money. The house, yes, for the boy if we beat time and I go first. The land, yes, in the trust, so no one could streamline it without Eli himself being a man capable of saying what things mean to him. A college fund with a guardian. A list of names he can call if he feels lost and I can't answer. It felt like weaving a basket when you know your hands won't always be there to hold the fruit. Thomas, Alma said as we signed, good men leave more than money. They leave paths. I thanked her with the kind of thank you that includes a pie in September and a ride when your car sits down and refuses to move in January. On a warm night in May, we took the swing down, sanded it, stained it, and hung it again. Eli held the ladder like it was his sacred duty. Ruth handed me rags, her face soft the way it gets when work runs through the bones like music. Duke lay under the birch and sighed in dog language. The chains hummed when we tested them. Eli climbed into the middle and said, feels new, feels old. Best things do, I said. We ate watermelon on the steps and spit seeds at the gravel and talked about nothing and everything. Whether the new math is really new, whether Duke dreams in color, whether lightning bugs feel the joy they cause. The air smelled like cut grass and warm dirt, and the ribbon we'd tied in December was now on the kitchen doorknob where it belonged, holding our house keys gently like a promise. About halfway through that summer, I saw Nate at the gas station. He was thinner. His eyes were quieter. He nodded at me like a man who recognizes a landmark that once saved him from getting lost and doesn't know whether to be grateful or mad. I nodded back. He said, how's the boy? Growing, I said. He swallowed. Good. Are you learning anything important? I asked. It wasn't a trap. It was the porch. He looked at the pumps and at the road. That making people uncomfortable because you're uncomfortable isn't leadership, he said, voice small like a first prayer. That fear isn't respect. That when you lose the right to speak into a kid's life, you might have earned that loss. I didn't clap him on the shoulder. I didn't offer advice. I said, that sounds like a start, and he nodded and paid and left. He did not whistle. Months passed. The birch dropped its leaves and then grew them again. Eli turned 10 with a cake that asked for no apology for the amount of icing on it. He keeps a list now on the fridge under a magnet shaped like a tractor. It says things that make me feel safe. The list changes. It starts with porch swaying and ends some days with math homework, and sometimes with the smell of Grandpa's shirt, and sometimes with being told why, and sometimes with his own name, which is maybe the bravest list item I've ever seen. The other day, Miss Kingston came and sat on the porch with us. She had a folder with her, and inside was a thin stack of papers that documented the months we had crossed. I have to close the file, she said to me quietly, while Eli and Ruth argued whether a hot dog is a sandwich. Because we're good, I said. Because you did your work, she said. Because the boy knows his words. Because this town did what towns should. Because men like you sat on a porch and made a boundary a blessing. She left the folder with us because paper is a talisman where I come from. I slid it into the envelope under the table with all the others. When Eli goes away to college or to the Navy or to a girl who laughs with her whole face, I will give him that folder and say, here's the map of how we got here. I do not have a miraculous moral to offer you that fits on a bumper sticker. I have this instead, in a small town on the Indiana-Kentucky line, in a house with a porch and a swing that hums when the wind is honest. A boy learned that a man's voice can be a shelter. He learned that paperwork is not an enemy when it is a promise written down. He learned that revenge can be a word for the satisfaction of seeing justice work, quiet, lawful, steady, as long as what you really wanted was healing. The last light of evening comes to us in a particular way. It starts at the far end of the field, gold and slow, and walks toward the house like it knows we've been waiting. It touches the birch, and, because leaves are greedy for glory, they hold it a little and then give it away all at once. It lays itself like a shawl across the porch swing, and the chains hum with it. Eli sits there, longer legs now, pencil behind his ear, and he tells me he is drawing a machine that takes bad feelings and turns them into something you can plant. What would you call a machine like that? I ask. He thinks. A porch, he says. I laugh the way old men do when their mouths forget their age. That's exactly right, I say. We sit until the stars decide to be seen. We sit until the dog sighs and the kitchen light begs us to come in. We sit in the place that was comfort, that was almost lost, that brought us home again. When I close my eyes at night now, I hear the swing. It has a sound that isn't quite a note and isn't quite a word. It says, hold. It says, teach. It says, stay. And I do. Because a promise is a man sitting exactly where he said he would, making a boy feel the size he really is until he grows into it, and then some. If you've listened this long, you are part of the porch. You have your own swing, your own chain, your own street, where the sheriff and the school counselor and the banker and the lawyer and the ordinary folks with crockpots will show up when things need holding. Put your paper in order. Set your boundaries like fences to keep the good in. Keep a pencil behind your ear. And if a man ever tells a boy that discomfort is a path to manhood, invite him to sit and teach him what a roof is for. Because in the end, revenge in a town like mine is just another word for this. We refused to let harm define the story. We wrote another ending. We hung the swing back up and sat down, and we stayed. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Your comments mean more to me than you know. I read every single one. And if you'd like to hear the next story of hope and justice, just click the box that will be displayed on the screen after a couple of seconds. Thank you for spending this time with me.